Hey y'all, this is Michael Richard with Recirculating Farms, and today we're going to talk about mulch. There's a few things that you need to consider when selecting your mulch. So the benefits and all of the other things that you need to consider, such as toxins and other pollutants that might be in your mulch. So first we'll start with the benefits of using mulch. One of the main benefits is retaining moisture in your soil. When having something covering your soil, it stops evaporation from happening so quickly and helps your soil retain moisture, which helps you conserve on water and helps you be more confident that your plants are not drying out so quickly. And having even constant moisture in your soil also allows for your plants to absorb nutrients at a better rate. Another good benefit of using mulch is suppressing weeds. Every gardener hates having weeds in their space, and having mulch down limits those weeds from sprouting. This also makes it easier to weed your plants. By having a few here and there, it makes it a lot easier than having to go through and pick out loads and loads of weeds all over your grow space. And there's different types of mulch that have better weed suppressing factors, and so we'll get into that in a little bit. Another big benefit of using mulch is having something that makes your face look a lot nicer. It makes things look a lot more uniform, and like I said before, it cuts down on the competition from other plants, other weeds, and it also can help fight against some pests if you use certain mulches. There's also some mulches that will help you fight against weeds and pests such as cover crops. We talked about it in some of our last videos how we grew sorghum Sudan grass. Sorghum Sudan grass actually has a toxin in it. When it's ground back into the soil and used as a green manure, it can help fight against nematodes and also help suppress plants. So some cover crops act as a mulch and as a weed suppressant, so you get double the benefits. So another benefit of using mulch in your garden is that it softens the water as it hits the soil. So meaning that it kind of breaks up the water as it's going down and it doesn't compact your soil as much. So for example, as I turn on my hose, it's coming out at full speed, but it's not hitting the soil at full speed, so it's not compacting the soil as much. It's dispersing that water and spreading it out evenly. This also helps fight against erosion. Some other benefits that mulches have are the addition of nutrients going into your soil over time. So we'll talk about that a little more as we label out some of the mulches. So right here we have a good example of wood mulching. So these are some free wood chips that we got from some local arborists, and we spread these evenly across the ground after we put our plants into the ground. So this is a really good cheap mulch. You can often get this for free from tree cutting companies. Sometimes your local landfill might even process trees and turn them into mulch for you. One thing about organic gardening is you want to avoid the colored mulches that you see at big box stores and even sometimes at your local landfill. Those black and red dyed mulches aren't very healthy for your soil because, like I said, they are dyed. You want to go for the more natural looking woods so you don't have any residual chemicals going into your soil. Another thing to think about when you're using wood material for your mulch is the plant that that wood material came from. So some trees actually have toxins in their bark and into their wood pulp that will actually discourage the growth of other plants. Some of these chemicals are called tannins. You may have heard of these. So if you have a plant that has high tannins in it and then you try to plant your seeds in there, those chemicals will actually hinder the growth of your seedlings. That doesn't mean necessarily that your seedlings won't grow at all, but they'll definitely have to fight to do so. Another thing that is common with using wood material for your mulch is the tying up of nitrogen in your soil. So there's a myth going around that when you use wood chips in your as your mulch, it actually takes nitrogen out of your soil. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is the microbes that focus on creating nitrogen in your soil by breaking down other materials start to focus solely on that mulch that's at the surface level. And so while they're breaking down the mulch that you just put down, they're not breaking down the organic material that's in your soil and providing nitrogen for your plants. So it's always good to think about the lack of nitrogen that will be tied up in your wood chips as they're getting broken down. But as those microbes do break down those wood chips, that nitrogen will be released into your soil. So you can see here that we have sort of a mixture of wood chips. This was laid a while back and it's had a couple of layers on it. So we have some broken down wood chips and then we have some more newer wood chips that haven't broken down so much. But those ones that broke down have added nitrogen to our soil. Another reason I really like to use wood chips as my first layer of mulch in my grow spaces is because it encourages fungal activity. The fungal activity that I'm mostly trying to cultivate is mycorrhizae activity. Mycorrhizae are a type of fungi that spread throughout soil and help plants connect to each other. They help plants share sugars and protect themselves against the attacks and raise their defenses, and they also help them grow a lot faster by sharing resources throughout the season. So one of my favorite mulches to use are leaves. So leaves are pretty abundant and pretty cheap as well. You know, everybody has leaves in their yard during the fall. Everyone's neighbors are always raking up leaves, and there's bags of leaves sitting on the side of the road all the time. So it's a very inexpensive mulch, and it's also a very lightweight and airy mulch. So you don't really have to worry about it compacting or creating too much friction for your seeds to push through. Another big benefit of using leaves as mulch is that it mimics nature's natural flora. So if you go into the forest, you're going to see leaves all over the place, and those slowly break down over time, leaving organic matter behind and creating rich, fertile soils. So if you were to lay down leaves as mulch in your grow space, the same thing is going to happen. So here we try to use leaves as much as we possibly can. We have some laid down right here. They're creating a nice even space. There's no weeds growing up through them. And it's really easy for us to just kind of move them out of the way right whenever we're ready to seed. So one thing to consider when you're using leaves is the same thing that we're talking about with using wood materials. Some leaves from some trees contain tannins and other chemicals that can harm your plants and are used to suppress plant growth and competition. So it's always important to make sure that you're not using any leaves that would be toxic to the plants that you're growing. Okay. So next we're going to talk about pine straw. Pine straw is another really easy to use, pretty affordable mulch to get. We got this from our local store, Jefferson Feed. It was about $10 a bale. Prices may vary on your location and availability, but like I said, this is a pretty easy one to find. I've even heard of people finding some good deals or free deals on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. So pine straw is exactly what it sounds like. It's pine, dried up pine needles that come from the local pine trees down here. And it usually comes in big bales. A bale will cover a pretty good area. And it's also very lightweight, similar to the leaves. The reason I keep mentioning things being lightweight is because it makes it really easy for seedlings to be able to push through them. And another thing I really like about the pine straw is that it doesn't cover as thickly as the leaves do. And so it has a little more, it allows a little more oxygen flow through the soil for areas that I want to dry out a little more than some others. So here's a good example of pine straw. We put the pine straw down, just moved a little bit of it out of the way, made a little hole, and then stuck our plants right into that hole. And it's helping us retain moisture really well and suppressing a lot of weeds, as you can see. So another really easy to use mulch are grass or lawn clippings. So everyone has pretty easy access to these things. Whenever you or a neighbor cuts their lawn, there's always these bags of lawn clippings left over. So you can use these to dump around your trees or your shrubs. That's where I would recommend using them mostly. You could also use them in your grow spaces, but I hesitate to use that a little bit because there could be grass seeds in the lawn clippings, and you don't want to spread those type of grass seeds through your grow space because you're going to be fighting that grass for eternity until you're able to solarize them or pick them out of there until they finally submit. So one really big benefit of using grass clippings is that they produce a lot of nitrogen in grass, and so when those break down over time, they're slowly releasing nitrogen back into your soil. So I mentioned earlier that you can use cover crops as a mulch. So cover crops, and there's some other materials that you can grow to use as mulch, such as hays or different straws. So these can be any type of green manure that you'd like to grow. You can have a separate space in your lot or in your grow space where you specifically grow things to be used as mulch and green manures. Some farms practice this on a regular, and then you might even have some growing neighbors who have some piles of hay or things that they aren't using laying around. So another mulch that people are starting to use a lot are rocks. Rocks are very beneficial in suppressing weeds as they're very heavy. It makes it very hard for plants to push through the soil, and they are great at moisture retention because they trap a lot of that water under the soil by giving you complete coverage of the soil. One thing to note about rocks is that pressure that it puts on weeds is the same amount of pressure that it would put on any of your plants. So it's important to start your seedlings indoors before transferring into space that's mulched with rocks. Another benefit of using rocks are that they also slowly leach nutrients into the ground. As water and rain beats onto the rocks, they'll slowly degrade and start to release trace minerals into your ground. Thanks for watching our video about mulch. And if you have any questions about cover crops or direct seeding, please check out our other videos. Thanks y'all. See you next time.